Good morning, Facebook. Grace and peace to you all. One man's journey, especially over the last 5 years, of seeking, understanding, and experiencing God's love through healing, through prayer, through faith, that we live by faith, not by sight, focusing on saints in the past that have loved God with their entire life and yet died and suffered. What do we do with that? A lot of times we try and blanket statements. We try and put God in a box instead of just trusting Him, submitting our life fully to Him. I think of Hebrews 11 that talks about, that there are those that live by faith, that, shut the mouths of lions, that conquered great nations, all these things that they were able to do by faith. But then some were torn in two. They both lived by faith, and yet they suffered. Mankind brought sin and death and suffering into the world by being apart from God. We are to pray and lay hands on the sick and pray for those that are hurting. We are an expression of God's love to those that are in that place of brokenness and suffering. We're able to be an expression of God's love in those moments, and I've seen healing in those moments. But it's not a blanket statement that if you do this, then God's going to do this, right? We take scriptures and so think of this, as Paul did some of the most amazing healings that were out there, and yet he suffered and died. We're going to suffer. Christ prayed for God deliver him from, take this cup from me, the suffering that he was going to do, and yet he suffered and died. It's part of mankind, of what's happened. But by healing, we're supposed to pray for those. I pray expectantly for healing for people that have cancer that I love, people that are suffering. I pray expectantly for God to heal. But if you think about that, I am His, and I live by faith completely. Whether I did a lot of damage to my kidney when I was out there doing the stuff that I did. If something were to happen to where I would die from kidney failure, my faith, it's not because I have lack of faith, it's because I did physical stuff to my body, right? That ruined me, right? But my faith is intact. I love God. It's that but if not faith. I believe that God will deliver us from this fiery furnace, but if not, I'm not bowing down to your idols. I'm God's wholly, completely, no matter what happens to me physically. I'm going to pray for healing. If I'm sick, I'm going to pray for myself. If my neighbor gets sick with cancer, I'm praying for that person, for God to do a miracle, that God's love be manifested in that healing so that they might know Him more. That's what I see. It's one man's kind of journey with faith and healing. And, that there's that thing out there where if you aren't healed, you just don't have enough faith. That goes against what Hebrews 11 is saying. I just can't reconcile that. We take little parts of Scripture and we try and build a theology on that, rather than the reality of it. If that were true, then nobody would die, right? Because people would be out there with enough faith that nobody would ever die. So what happens is those that Christ healed, those that Paul healed, died eventually, right? They suffered eventually. It's part of our human condition of being separated from God. Now it's about us trusting in God and the mystery of God, living by faith, not by sight, experiencing His wholeness in our life, no matter what our physical circumstances. Continue to pray for people, expectantly for God to heal. But at the same time, just continue to be His. Be the fruit of being in Him, and be that manifestation of His love wherever you go, and pray for the sick. Pray expectantly for God to heal. And that's where my life is, and that's where we experience the peace of God, of being His. But we aren't in that. We're not in that but if not faith. We're if then faith. If God does this, then I'll believe. If this, then. That's just not it. It's about us truly trusting God, and then being an expression of His love wherever we go, and praying for the sick, pray for healing, pray for miracles, and then what happens is allow God to be God. That's where the power comes in, but we make it about us. Really, we always come back to making it about us instead of just trusting God. with our entire lives. For I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. God bless y'all.